Thank you so much, like I say, for joining us. Today is all about the power of partnerships. It's about collaboration. It's about building relationships and how that makes Manchester as a region much stronger. So we want to just talk about some of the relationships that us five have got between us, some of the work that we do together, the importance of that over the past 12 to 18 months, especially. I think we've all found those relationships that we already had invaluable, to be honest, over the past sort of 12, 18 months, and really strengthened, I think, and hopefully everyone on the panel will agree with me. I've been lucky to work with every single person on this panel for a number of years now, but as I say, over the past sort of 12 to 18 months, that's accelerated and intensified. So whereas we would probably meet once every couple of months, it was been weekly and in some occasions daily, to be honest, on calls. But all of that obviously in the past 12 months has been virtual. So today's the first time that we've all been in a room together, which is just so nice. And obviously really wonderful to see so many of you here as well today to enjoy this. And actually we were supposed to start at 10:30, but we let it go on a little bit longer because you all seem to be just enjoying networking together and being in a room together. So we didn't want to disrupt that fun, really. So that's where we are. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to each one of my panel to introduce themselves, the businesses that they're from, and perhaps just sort of talk about their sort of impact and influence in the Greater Manchester region. So we'll start with you, Emma, if that's okay.
When starting at this end, the answer was going to. Yeah, so I'm Emma Degg. I'm the Chief Executive of the North West Business Leadership Team. So we were founded about 30 years ago, so we've been actually around for quite a long time. And over that period, really, we've been doing ESG. So my job is to bring together a small group of primarily big business leaders from across sectors to work together to make a difference to the community and economy of the region. So what does that mean in practice? That's about never duplicating what anybody else is doing, but doing some thought leadership about what the businesses and universities who are in my membership think is important, looking where people are delivering against that and how we can support and scale that up, but also looking for where there are perhaps gaps, that we can use that private sector resource to actually make a difference in those places. Everything that we do is in partnership. So as Sam says, work together with everybody on this panel. So some of that is long term, and I'll come back perhaps later to a couple of the big projects that we've got ongoing around, particularly innovation, finance, and net zero. But I just wanted to make an observation really about the relationships that we all have. Certainly true for me, and I guess it's true for most people, that what's made a difference getting through the last horrendous 18 months, both in personal life, family life, and professionally, is people. And we had existing relationships beforehand that meant we could quite speedily do the things that we needed to do without establishing those networks. And we've all contributed, I think, something slightly differently. So in terms of the GM chamber, particularly lots of things come out of the chamber, but particularly the business monitor and the real-time information from their members has just been hugely useful. And we've been able to get that out to our bigger businesses and in reverse really quickly. Work that Richard does actually doing the work, really, I would guess. Again, because we've got that existing relationship that happened with John. I cannot commend too highly, really, the work that the Combined Authority and the policy work that's been ongoing that was really nimble, switching really quickly and going very much into listening mode as well as sort of being brilliant. I just wanted to finish on talking about Prime Manchester and Sam, really, because we've had lots of conversations out with meetings as well and that mutual support. And I think moving forward, people I've seen struggle most in terms of business of those who didn't necessarily have established relationships beforehand. You can kind of keep things going on screen. Finding new allies, finding new relationships, finding new collaborations is really important. So it's not just that I think Prime Manchester has been really important through this process, but I think is even more important moving forward. That's why I'm so glad to be here today.
Thank you, Emma. And I've got to say as well that Emma has been a huge support to me just as a chief executive of Pro Manchester. I took over the role. It's 3 years now, which I still can't believe, to be perfectly honest, what has happened. Although I'm still kind of saying that last year didn't happen, so maybe it was only a year and a half. But Emma's been a huge support to me from a mentoring perspective as well, actually. So again, it's just constantly building on those relationships, which don't just always have to be solely about the business side of things. It can be much more than that, and it's imperative and important, and how building those relationships with your fellow peers is crucial for your own personal development and professional and business development. So John, if you don't mind handing over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. So yes, John Rathmell. I'm Director for Strategy, Research and Economy at the Combined Authority, so working for the Mayor and the other leaders on the Greater Manchester districts on their priorities. But I mean, to sort of build the theme that Emma started, really, I mean, there is in the role of the Combined Authority, there is virtually nothing that we do without working with a whole range of other partners, and that's partly because of our scale. I mean, we have an economy team of 8 people. There's sort of, but at the same time, great ambitions across our political leaders. So actually, that working in partnership across business organisations with individual business, but also I think part of this as well, the voluntary and community sector, other parts of the public sector, national government. So a lot of our work in areas that we might come back to around things like leadership and management program we're developing, implementation of our local industrial strategy, development of good employment charter, all of that actually involves a huge amount of drawing on the resources and expertise and knowledge of colleagues here and other organisations, so we often play that coordination convening role in the city region where we can, and the economic resilience group, which Sam and others are on, that has developed through the pandemic, has been a big part of that. We'll come back to. We have a particularly close relationship with the Growth Hub, which various blushes, but I think but I think you'd safely say is the most effective, well-developed, successful growth hub in the country. When from our perspective, we get to deal with national government and other city regions, and you see what's happening elsewhere as well, and it's just miles ahead of anything else that anybody else has got. And I think we're very fortunate in that, both in the sort of the speed of response to what's happened over the last 18 months, but also in some of that long-term planning and delivery. I mean, the Chamber likewise working on a whole range of issues, transport, skills, the good employment charter, and it's probably worth saying as well that whilst we've got these close relationships and trusting relationships, and that's so important for delivering things, that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't disagreements, challenges, but it means that we've had some robust conversations on various issues. But what that means is there is a relationship and a mechanism to have that robust conversation. I think powerful. Likewise at the Northwest level as well. It's before you all rudely interrupted us by starting the panel, I was just having a discussion about the next stages of engagement with government and MPs in particular around Net Zero Northwest, and some of those relationships across the wider Northwest reports, as well as other one we've worked on, have been important as well. So I think what it means, and hopefully for you and your businesses as well, means there's a whole network of conversations, support, advice when you need it to plug into, and hopefully we can be part of that Combined Authority as well.
Yeah, so we're going to delve into a little bit of that a bit more. So certainly the Net Zero Northwest and some of those other programmes as well that you mentioned in a second. It's just actually today it's not just about sort of talking about our partnerships, but helping to inform you really and how you can perhaps get involved in some of this work as well. So it's actually how does it affect you and your businesses, and how we can perhaps utilise you and your businesses to get involved in some of this work going forward as well. So it's really and just understanding the landscape. A lot of the time actually we assume that businesses understand all of this and what goes on, but sometimes we need to kind of maybe look a little bit deeper down into businesses to help them to understand how we all sort of fit together, how it all works, so that you can then better understand what the opportunities are for you. So that's what today definitely is all about. So just hand over to Richard then.
So my name is Richard Jeffrey. I'm the National Director of GC Business, part of the Growth Company, and in connection to Greater Manchester. I set the Growth Hub up back in 2011 as part of the Growth Company, and gone on to support over 12,000 businesses, helping them start, grow, scale, tap into international markets. And having that support infrastructure with the hub already in place here, I think did put Greater Manchester in a really big advantage when the pandemic came, because there was a lot of support already in place that we could quickly pivot, and we changed overnight a whole raft of programs to continue to support. And what's been really, so the fact that existed was great for GM, but that only existed because of the partnerships. That couldn't have been created just in isolation with just the Growth Company doing it. It was the sum of the parts coming together to create that growth. Interestingly enough, I've recently taken on a new role in the Growth Company, and I'm now leading on our national development and the work of our national expansion. And one thing that's probably not as well known about the Growth Company, yes, we deliver for Greater Manchester, but most of our work now is actually outside of Greater Manchester. We currently employ around about 1,300 people, and are expanding quite rapidly at the moment, delivering the whole raft of stuff across the whole of the UK. So some really interesting stuff there, and keen to come back, because what that's given me is a bit of a perspective of what's been done really, really well here, and how we shouldn't take what we've got for granted. But equally, it's also shown me that we still need to invest in that, we still need to do more, and there's still gaps to enhance what we're doing. So really keen to touch on that, but couldn't have got the Growth Hub without this partnership. We couldn't have responded to the pandemic in the way that we did if this partnership didn't exist. And having that group of businesses coming together, business organisations coming together, where they go in the room, there are no egos when you go in that room. Everybody is absolutely committed to how do we solve this problem. That doesn't happen elsewhere in the country that I've seen. It is unique here, and we should be very thankful for that, but not take it for granted.
Sometimes it's highlighting a problem that we didn't know existed necessarily. It's about bringing that insight, isn't it? Talking to our members, talking to the businesses, and highlighting issues where perhaps we hadn't seen them coming. And then, as like I say, and Emma said before, it's mobilising really, really quickly as to how do we deal with that. I do want to make today's as interactive as possible as well. So if you do think of any questions as we're going along, please do let me know. Just pop your hand up, or we can come to a sort of Q&A session at the end, whichever way you prefer. But I am keen for you guys to get involved in this conversation as well. So Chris, I'll hand over to you.
So, morning everybody. My name is Chris Fletcher. I'm the Policy and Communications Director at Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce. We are the largest Chamber of Commerce in the UK, 4,500 business members at the whole of Greater Manchester. And my role really covers two things: the policy bit, which is all the stuff that's coming out of government, how it impacts on business. More importantly, finding out what businesses are facing at the present moment in time, and feeding that back up to the local decision makers, the national decision makers as well. So that's a big part of the partnership that we've got here, especially with the public sector. The Chamber as a whole really is there as a business membership organisation. It's similar to Pro Manchester. It's not in direct competition. We work very, very closely with each other. We're there to support each other. We've got members in both organisations. There's no doubt other business organisations there as well. But what we try and do is offer, it's not business support, but we're there to support business. So we don't do business support in the way that the Growth Hub does. It's there to support business, to grow those networks, to grow your business, events, surveys, those type of things, to find out what's actually going on. Certainly over the last 12 to 18 months, I think the partnership that was very strong beforehand has got even stronger, with a range of people, and more people than we were probably working with beforehand, to be quite honest, has got a lot stronger. We've begun to do different things. We've developed as an organisation and a business ourselves. One thing, I think some probably agree with this, and Emma, business organisations are also businesses. We're also an SME, and sometimes people forget that. Sort of take it out, we're just there to serve them. No, we are a business, we've got to adapt as well. So some of the challenges that our members have faced, we've had to face as well. So again, I think that's quite an important thing. We've used our contacts with colleagues and partners to say, hang on a minute, how do we do this? What is there in there? How do we access some of the grant money that are going around one thing or another. So really the last 12 to 18 months has made that partnership really, really a lot stronger. I think one of the key things for me is we've got to build on it. We shouldn't just go back to what it was like 12, 18 months ago. We've got to develop those link teams stronger and really make sure that those opportunities that are out there for our members, for every business in Greater Manchester, we've got the right people that we can work with to make sure that they can grow and develop, that make sure you can grow and develop as well. We don't want to go back to what it was like. We want to carry on with that process and get things even better. So looking for strengthening that. But yeah, just to back up what Richard said as well, and John as well, and others, you go to other parts of the country and basket case springs to mind about some of how some of the stuff is done in local authority areas. Greater Manchester is really seen as having it right. It's not right all the time, it's not perfect, but I'll tell you something, when you go to some other areas in the country, we're streets ahead of them. We really are. So how can we maximise that now? Really make the most of it going forward. So that's all I want to say. I know there's plenty of questions.
Just like to be really clear, there are no basket cases in the Northwest.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. It's
Can I just put forward a little observation, because something's happened for all Manchester recently, literally last week, which has a potential to create opportunities for getting your message out further. I was on an event at Pro Manchester, and because of technology and Microsoft Teams, I ended up on the event wrong background. I am the wellbeing lead for Manchester branch of CIPD. And my logo was the CIPD logo. And Sean picked up that I was CIPD and asked how we could create a link, particularly with the growth company and Tom Pickford. I had a meeting with him last week, and Tom's now in contact with the Northern Area League of CIPD, because CIPD are really interested in creating business partnerships, involving organisations, particularly focusing on their people, and how they can make a difference. And all that's happened in the last 2 weeks, generated by me attending an event with the wrong banner in, and ultimately leading to a combination to help hopefully everyone succeed. So it does work.
Oh, absolutely
brilliant.
brilliant.
We know who we are.
Yeah, that's brilliant. No, that's absolutely, and you know, sometimes these opportunities happen by accident, but it is about, you know, kind of making the effort and being out there and getting involved in all of these sorts of things. I often make the point, actually, I sort of liken Pro Manchester membership to a gym, because it's one of these things that you can sign up to. If you don't actively get involved in it, it's going to be of absolutely no use to you at all. So, you know, it is important to kind of, with all of our organisations and with all of these partnerships and all of the stuff that we're going to talk about today, the point being is that we really want for you guys to come forward, to be part of that, and to make the most of those opportunities, which might just happen by accident in some respects, but you know, it was just being there and being in the room with the wrong logo, but it, you know, yeah, it worked out, didn't it?
You rotating logo.
I know.
We're all voting.
Yeah.
I probably should add that yes, we are a small number of actually an awful lot of other business organisations that are represented in and around Manchester as well. So there are a couple that aren't. We couldn't have everyone represented today, but certainly, you know, members of the CBI, the Federation for Small Business, etc. Lots of other organisations that we also work alongside. We've already mentioned a couple of the groups, and I just want to delve into those a little bit deeper, if that's okay. One of them being the Business Organisations Representative Group, which has a really wrong name, so we call it the Bros Group now, which is all of us combined alongside some of those other organisations I mentioned, CBI, FSB, the IOD, etc., to make sure that we're all coordinating effort. We're not duplicating any efforts either, understanding what each of those organisations are doing, how can we better support that, highlighting the problems. But I think, Richard, you were part of kind of that, its inception, and it was pre-COVID days, I must add. So these relationships are, you know, occurred and were formed way before this pandemic. But like I say, provided that great foundation for us to be able to up and mobilise and move fairly quickly from that point. But I think you were part of the inception.
I think I can take some of the blame for that.
Yeah.
So planning more meetings with the diary. It actually, there's a link here to the B word, to Brexit, because the day after the Brexit vote, you know, there's a lot of concern, regardless of wherever you voted and what your preferences were. There was a lot of concern. Business were anxious we were getting a lot of people coming to us who was worried. And I said, well, actually, we need to get a really positive message out there that there's still opportunities for growth. There's still a collaboration here in Greater Manchester. So I said, let's get all of the membership bodies together and let's meet. And it might be just for a short period of time whilst we come together, get some positive messages out, help people navigate through the changes that are coming and take it from there. Here we are all these years later, still meeting, still engaged, still collaborating. And I think even though it was that event that triggered it, actually we saw a huge amount of value, and those kind of Brexit negotiations went on. We saw there was a whole lot of other really positive and proactive things that we could get on and work on together. And then that meant that infrastructure was in place so that when COVID happened and kicked in, we had the mechanisms there to collaborate and share and work together. The trust was built up. We had people we could lean into and support one another. And I think we all found that hugely useful during that process. And it's really interesting, again, and it'd be good to come back to it, but just that being able to reach out and lean into fellow business leaders, how important that has been and will continue to be as we go through any other crisis or opportunity or change that comes. Having that group was personally for me hugely helpful, and I'm sure many others. But that was what kick-started it, and it's been very helpful, I think, to have that. And I think there's others that wanted to turn up. And I think there's a lot of people think Andy turns up to some of them, doesn't he? And he comes along and sees what's going on. I think he actually asked to join, didn't he?
There you go. You see.
and I think that is a sort of an important strand that we've on so far, but the joining up of business and economic leadership with political leadership in Greater Manchester. I mean, the mayor meeting, something like that. Councillor Elise Wilson, who's leader of Stockport and the economy portfolio. So there's a sort of there is that close relationship between political leadership in the city region and business leadership, and I think that helps set a common direction, a common understanding, and provides that forum for sometimes the challenging conversations I've talked about, clean air zones, issues like that where there are disagreements. It gives an opportunity to face-to-face a conversation about that. And I mean, also, we shouldn't let the moment pass without noting the announcement from Sir Richard Leese last night that he's standing down as leader of Manchester City Council after 25 years, and I suspect will come to be seen as probably the most influential leader in local government since the Second World War. I mean, a massive influence on the city region, but that was always part of his vision. And you will know the history of that better than I, but that sort of actually business and politics working together can drive huge change. And I think what we're doing is sort of building on that now, hopefully.
I'm for a couple of those books, and then something that I'm really interested in over the next few years, really. So the first thing to say is Andy does need to be applauded for being at those meetings, and some of them, it's safe space, but there were some tough conversations that have been had around a variety of topics. But you saw the results of that partly with the great sort of showdown with government that was never at Andy or Greater Manchester's behest, actually, in terms of the great lockdown and the settlement for business and so on, because he had full support of the business community and cross-party support for that stance as well. And that's because it wasn't something that was just announced or an individual politician's stance. It was something that Greater Manchester agreed, actually, the right way forward. And I think that we should never miss this point. We need to build on that and not forget that we get much further if we do that together and have those honest truth to power conversations first as well are really helpful. Sir Richard has been we owe a phenomenal debt to, actually. I quite agree with your analysis. My take as an outsider to Manchester, Greater Manchester, is those partnerships have always existed and they've been there for a long time. Graham Stringer, actually, Tony Lloyd, there's been a Manchester family, right? The danger with family businesses is that we can fail to refresh them, make them representative, make sure that because we're comfortable together, that sometimes that can end up meaning that it can feel difficult to actually break through. So how do we make sure that the next generation of leaders across sectors, across businesses, across our communities have those relationships too, and we sort of learn from what's gone, but don't get stuck in the past either. And I think that's a really interesting conversation for your membership, really, in terms of are we open enough to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
A quick comment on that as well.
Go for it, Terry.
Is you mentioned beforehand, lots of companies bewildered by how do you get involved in some of this stuff. Bit for me is you mentioned collaboration. How can you get involved now as a small business? That's the bit that I'm speaking with others that we're really interested. How can we as smaller businesses get involved in this? Quite difficult sometimes. Bigger businesses there and trying to break into that cadre of people, like you just said, how do we refresh, how do we do? That's the bit I'd love to find out a little bit more, because Provan has been helpful, you've been helpful to us as a business to do that. So how does smaller businesses get engaged with this and do this? Because we love to.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's knowing how do we do that without sort of being seen as a small business and you bounce back out again.
Absolutely, and Terry and I have actually had several conversations because Terry works with a lot of adult learning, don't you, online as well, and we're going to talk about the inclusive growth piece actually. So actually, a lot of the work that you're doing, Terry, fits in quite nicely with that agenda as well. Actually, so it's kind of opening up those doors and just introducing you to the right people, to the people that are really working in that space. You know, so we have talked about that quite a lot. Yeah,
if I can add to that, I think one of the key things that we found when we are introducing small businesses into this wider network is that it's so important to get the story right, pitch right, the targeting right. And so often we get people coming to us saying, can't get in, can't get anybody to listen to us, they're not interested, the city's not interested, the infrastructure is not interested. And actually they are, but they've got a lot of people coming to them. I mean, I don't know what your diary is like and what Andy's diary is like, but I guess it's pretty busy. And therefore, you know, getting it at the right time, getting that pitch absolutely spot on, right positioning, all of that. So leaning into support that is available through the Growth Hub, through the Chamber, through Pro Manchester. That's a starting point, because then that can help navigate into that broader system. But for, it's a bit like the old people we help to get cash. A lot of people come to us saying, can't get cash, no one wants to back the business. Well, actually, get the story right, and they do more often than not. So I think that's the key thing, and you've got a lot of support here to engage with that.
I think there's two sides to it as well. I think one bit around the commercial opportunity is that I've got a product or service or whatever it is, and I want to let more people know about it, and that's obviously what Rich is describing. We're seeing more and more businesses that say, well, I want to get more involved with, you know, things that are impacting on the community, or things around some of the big policy work and issues that come up. We mentioned the clean air zone already this morning. That's going to be huge over the next couple of months, and the impact and how businesses have to cope with that. And so it's really, you know, how sometimes people say, well, I just want to get in front of somebody, and like I said, they're just going in with a straightforward pitch. Well, that's not going to work really. Whereas what we try and do is encourage that engagement across a range of areas, really. No matter what size your business is, if you've got something that you want to get involved with, hopefully, for ourselves, I know that you know, Pro Manchester and other business organisations have groups of members that come together around sectors, around issues, or whatever it is. You know, probably got to be a little bit better at making more people aware that those groups exist, because that's the feedback there that we can give to people when we're sat around that table without they saying, hang on a minute, you know, this has got to look like this if it's going to work. Have you thought about doing it this way? That's where that connection starts. That isn't easy. Obviously, you've got 98,000 businesses in Greater Manchester, but it's got to start somewhere. So where you've got that encouragement and that sort of enthusiasm to get involved with that stuff, it's how we find those people, and it's where we meet in the middle. Then we can play them into the partnerships in that way.
I think it's how we design something, a new way of doing things together, to be frank, and I'd love to do that with Pro Manchester and others. So we partnered in the launch of a new company called Net Zero Northwest last summer, which brings together some of the big consumers and emitters of carbon for the region to actually resource some more capacity and get all sorts of activity going on around that. We had a reception in the House of Commons. We were talking to MPs about it and to big businesses. We want to do more than one thing with that. So we want to take out carbon, get to net zero, but we also want to make sure that those employment opportunities are actually accessed by our local communities, but we want to level up at the same time. And the truth is, offshore wind in this country has been a huge success because of what was done by the national government around that policy. But we lost quite a lot of the economic benefits of that because we didn't go early enough and we didn't look at supply chains and opportunities for smaller businesses early enough. So if you look at when those wind farms are built, most of the jobs are actually exported to Norway, actually, and Germany, which is who did it first and got there. So when we blithely say brilliant opportunities for the Northwest, and there are amazing pipeline projects, levelling up isn't automatically going to happen unless we start thinking and designing how do we crack that problem of got big businesses who are going to be investing in this and government going to be investing in this. We've got a pipeline of projects. We've got some challenges in there, some problems, some issues to resolve. How do we give SMEs and supply chains eyesight of that, and how do we work together to make sure we build that in place? Nobody knows that answer. It's not that you're not being given the opportunity. We don't know how to do it yet. And I think that's a really interesting discussion that we can have together as business organisations about this. How are we going to mean what we say? And you need to give us those answers. It's not the other way around. And it's that symbiotic relationship, really, that sometimes it can be like, well, this is about us cascading down. Actually, quite a lot of the innovation isn't happening in big business at all. It's happening elsewhere. And how do we develop those relationships? There's a challenge.
There's a challenge for us all. And you have the answers, apparently. Absolutely. Well, that's an interesting one, because you have talked about the innovation piece, and I do want to sort of move on to that a little bit. It was part of the discussion that we had. We had the business representative organisations meeting yesterday, so a lot of it was focused specifically around innovation Greater Manchester, which is coming down the line now. But I know Emma and I specifically have been working on more the leadership team, really, and I've just been offering a supporting hand with regards to the financing innovation project. Actually, do you want to tell everyone a little bit more perhaps about that?
Great, because Net Zero Northwest first, it's not I'm obsessed or anything. Spend my time with too many hydrogen engineers, you've got no idea. Innovate UK were really brave and funded a report that we produced about 3 years ago that looked at why it is that the Northwest has a gap that's been opening up since 2007 between the size of business base and the amount of innovation funding that we attract. And we're a real outlier. So we're worse as a percentage than North East Yorkshire Wales. So this is not a North-South thing. There's something really specific happening, and it's largely around SMEs. So big business pretty much, and it always depends how you measure it, puts in just a little bit above what you would expect in terms of the national average. I'm not going to talk about universities because it upsets my members when I say that actually they do pretty well. But for SMEs, there's something going on. And what that report found, in short, is ask as often, as successful as often, ask for less. So there's something around risk, there's something around equity, and there's something around collaboration that's going on. So a number of pieces of work came out of that. But one that, again, Sam has done more than add to her advice, has very much partnered with us on, along with the likes, more luckily, of Northern Gritstones, Cambridge Angels, both of our combined authorities and others, was looking at actually how can we make sure that we do something about what's going wrong in the pipeline between private sector investment in particular, so equity, venture, patients and so on, with our investable propositions. So further report was published, we've been quite busy in lockdown, again last summer, and that working group has been looking at how we can pilot within the Northwest project to bring together some of that investment and some of, we all know that there's a lot of money in the system at the moment, fighting to find a home, but actually those projects aren't coming through. So we have some recommendations that we're going to be publishing again ahead of a meeting we've got with Kwasi Kwarteng, Secretary of State, who's very interested in looking at how actually we can be a test bed for how government can make sure they get to 2.4% of GDP in terms of investment, most of which isn't government funding. Most of that is going to have to come from the private sector and investors. So yeah.
Which is a really, really interesting part of the conversation that we had yesterday with regards to the innovation GM, with regards to creating the right ecosystem to be able to support these sorts of businesses, and actually looking back into the sort of devolution agenda, and what was the sole purpose of that is to not to go with a begging bowl and asking government for money, but actually to become fairly self-sufficient in regards to having the private sector actually make we can actually do this solely on our own, which sort of sits in, I suppose, with levelling up agendas and all the like as well. Probably going to just come over to you, John, at this particular point, just to maybe explain a little bit more, following on from that, with regards to some of the work of the CA and perhaps what are the sort of the things coming down the line at the moment that perhaps businesses might need to keep aware of.
Yeah, of course. Just building on the innovation theme, actually, the thing I've noticed about Innovation Greater Manchester and other campaigns groups coming together is that often they're business led. So Innovation Greater Manchester is convened by and led by businesses who come together with a common cause and a common idea and seen a challenge, and in that case with the universities as well. And so the combined authority role in that is often supporting, convening, making the links to government, making the case to government. But it is sort of businesses coming to work together, and I think that's a specific example within that was the AMPI, the Advanced Materials Productivity Institute, up in the Northern Gateway, just between Rochdale and Bury. It just received £20 million worth of funding from government, and that's come about because some local businesses said there's a gap here. There's something we as business, there's a missing network. There's a missing organisation to bring this together, and they made the case, and then we came into support, and others came into support and built it up, and eventually government have funded it, or quite quickly government have funded it. So I think it just shows, coming back to the conversation about networks, there's not one network, there's a whole range of literally probably thousands of networks and conversations going on. So if on almost any issue you're thinking about, if you're thinking actually my business has an interest in this, or I'd like to get involved in that, there's almost certainly someone somewhere in Greater Manchester doing that, involved in that, working on it. And probably the best way to get involved is you just come and talk to us, and we will. We don't know that if we don't know who's doing it, we'll probably know the person who will know who's doing it, sort of thing. So I think that business leadership point is important. So coming to your question about priorities for the combined authority, I mean, two big things for us over the coming months on the economic side. One is the spending review and levelling up white paper, which we're expecting around about the same time, and I think that's the next stage in the devolution journey. That will determine how much resources are available for a lot of what we do, what powers are available. Although the thing I've come to realise, having been through a few of these processes with government now, is that there's a lot we can do ourselves through all the sorts of things we've been talking about. I mean, yes, it's great if there's government investment. Yes, we can do it on a bigger scale. Yes, we can achieve more. But actually, a lot ourselves almost, and that is also helpful for providing consistency over time, because with government programmes come and go, sure, nobody will be using the term levelling up in 4 years because it will all have moved on to something else. But actually, having a consistent local agenda that businesses and politicians are behind gives some continuity. And I think related to that, the other big thing coming up for us in the autumn will be we're refreshing the Greater Manchester strategy at the moment, which is our strategy for bringing together all of those ambitions, particularly on the back of the local elections in May and the Mayor's manifesto commitments, and how that links up with the wider system. But again, those commitments can only be delivered. They can't be delivered by the combined authority. They can't be delivered by the public sector. They can only be delivered by all different sectors and groups in Greater Manchester. So yeah, I think the spending review, levelling up white paper, and Greater Manchester strategy are two things that we'll continue to talk to you about, but probably everyone will hear more about.
And yeah, like I said, and we will continue as always to make sure that you get the most up-to-date information that we can give you that comes out of all of these meetings. Richard, I think we want to talk about your national role a little bit more. You mentioned a few things, didn't you? And I kind of maybe we just want to talk to people in the essence of, we could talk all day. I can see that this is going to happen, but we have only got till 11:30, so we're going to champion through all of these sorts of things. But be interesting to know a little bit more about your national role and perhaps some of the projects and some of the initiatives that you're working on that businesses might be interested in.
Yeah, sure. So really proud to have set the growth over, run that over the last 10 years, and that's been a fantastic experience. But the growth company has both an opportunity and strategic intent to grow and expand across the country for a whole raft of reasons. We're an independent company. We need to grow. We need to have that sort of sustainability ourselves in the longer run. And we think there's a great space in the market for a not-for-profit provider at that national scale that is focused on delivering in a place with our expertise that we've built up here in Greater Manchester. We've got that knowledge, we've got that know-how, we understand how to operate at that level. And we have got some really great mechanisms for how to help businesses grow well and do that in a sustainable way, both from the people, the planet, their sustainability as a business in themselves. So we've got some really great approaches and taking that nationally. Some of the things that we're able to do as well with our national work, I'll just pick up on a couple. One thing that we were able to get up and running during the last 18 months was the National Peer Networks programme. And that was an opportunity where we went to government. They've got one line in one of the policy documents saying we want to help businesses, support the businesses. Well, that's right at the heart of what we've always been about. And so we went to them, put some propositions together and say, here's how you could do it. And so we are now working with them and have been working with them at that national level to get that rolled out, that programme across the whole country. And that's about providing a structured format way for people to come together, to go through an action learning set and build up that network. Some of you in the room may not have been involved in that. And we're able to take that national role, work with BASE and advise government on how to get that rolled out at the local level. And Pro Manchester themselves have been involved, Chairman's been involved in helping us deliver that here in Greater Manchester, but it's also given us the opportunity to work across the whole country to get that. And so it's about getting some of those national programmes such as that working really, really well at the local level. Some of the other really big priorities that we're focused on at the minute is the future of the Growth Hub network at a national level, and we're doing a lot of work with governments on that to look at the future of that Growth Hub network and having that a more substantive central role, so that, sometimes people say, well, why are we doing all this work everywhere else? Well, actually, having a stronger national network strengthens what we can do here in Greater Manchester and builds on some of the best practice and allows Greater Manchester to continue to do what it does incredibly well. So there's that. The other big one, low carbon. I'm aware of time, but there's lots of other work taking place on that and a lot of big national investment taking place in there. What I want to see more work on in that space is not just supporting the big businesses who need to decarbonise, not just supporting innovation in that space. Very, very important that those are. It's about the mass adoption of low carbon technology across all businesses. And I know some people in the room are very actively involved in that. And I think that's a real area of focus, because we're only going to hit those climate change targets if we get that mass adoption and we all change our behaviour in that place. So that's going to be a really important area of work for us going forward as well. So lots of really exciting things for us. We're also set up a consultancy division, so we're doing a lot of consultancy work as well for other places around the country. So very exciting time for us at the Growth Company.
Sorry, Richard, I feel like I didn't leave you enough time, but we were talking about some things, but that's great. So if there is any, if you've got any more questions on any of that, I'm sure Richard would be more than happy to maybe stick around 5 minutes and answer any immediate questions. I think the one thing that sets Pro Manchester apart is Pro Manchester is Manchester. The Combined Authority, the Greater Manchester Combined Authority is obviously Manchester, whereas some of these other organisations are part of much bigger, wider national remits. And one of the questions that I get asked quite a lot, and I have forewarned Chris about this, so it's okay, is the Chamber a competitor of Pro Manchester? So I told Chris that I was going to fire that question at him today because I want to dispel any myths about the competitive nature between the Chamber and Pro Manchester. And perhaps you can explain a bit more about the British Chamber of Commerce in the same ilk. That'd be great.
She did give me the heads up yesterday afternoon and said, "I'll just ask you if you don't want to." Say no. Let's get it out there because I think it's important. Because the time we're talking about partnerships and collaboration and whatever, I think you start to see, well, and they're doing this, so we've got to do this and nothing else. That's completely wrong. It's not the GM way, it's not our way, it's not anybody else's way that we work. So we are not competitors. We're not constantly trying to snipe at each other or anything like that. We do support each other in looking at business. You mentioned the British Chambers of Commerce. That is the sort of umbrella organisation. There's 53 accredited chambers of commerce in the UK. Greater Manchester is the largest one. British Chambers of Commerce got their office down in Petit France. Just the side of St James's Park down there. We, as a Chamber of Commerce, are members of British Chambers of Commerce. They don't have business members. Business members are the local chambers. That's what I have to say, because obviously we're on the ground. We know what's happening locally. We've got that better direct connection. Obviously, we feed stuff up into British Chambers of Commerce. They've got really strong links with national government departments, leading opposition figures at that national level and international level. Well, there's now been a really strong programme of growth linking up with overseas chambers that we can use through that network as well. Which chambers go out and they sign deals with organisations for affiliate services that we can then offer to our members. So things like free legal helplines, things like that. Which Chambers of Commerce do the deal, give it to local chambers, then we can offer that as part of our membership package. To work as well. On a local level, there is some difference because obviously, as Sam said, you know, there's that sort of Manchester focus with Pro Manchester. We are Greater Manchester. We're starting to encourage, you know, and look at all 10 local authority levels there. I mean, we've got that sort of regional and national bit as well through linking up with other chambers. Do a lot of work, for example, with colleagues in Liverpool, with Leeds, on that sort of M62 corridor. Birmingham, Bristol, and also London as well, because what you've got there is you've got, you know, similarities with mayoral combined authorities. You know, you've got Andy Street down in Birmingham, so it's quite interesting to see what happens down there with an elected compared to what goes on in Greater Manchester with Andy Byrne. You've got the two Andys, haven't you? Steve Roderick in Liverpool. You know what happens over there that we work with and look at that sort of level. So yeah, there will be some similarities and some overlap with services that we offer. Yes, we've got an events program or whatever. But I think part of it is, again, recognising our unique bits and putting it together to say, well, actually, together it's a lot stronger. But why waste time, you know, trying to duplicate, and Emma said this, duplicate what somebody else is doing, and we're doing something completely different. But together then, if you're a business in Greater Manchester and Manchester, you know you've got some top class organisations working for you. You've got some great people working in the public sector for you. Our job is to make sure that we can maximise those opportunities for you. So there is no competition in any way, shape or form. And say the same thing about every business organisation. The day we lose sight of that and take our focus off you to say, what are you doing? And this and the other, that's the day we lose it. That's the day we stop being there for you as businesses in Greater Manchester. We shouldn't be taking money off you. You're paying us to look after you, give you the best opportunities you possibly can. So that's hopefully an answer there.
Yeah, absolutely. Just the complementary offer. So just a very easy example of this is that the Chamber do, and I think Emma mentioned it actually, the Business Monitor, which has been a crucial part of insight and information into business confidence and everything else throughout the past 12-18 months. Now, Pro Manchester doesn't need to go to set up its own Business Monitor and set that up. The Chamber are already doing it wonderfully. So we would just incorporate into our comms to make sure that actually we can get our businesses to contribute to all of that as well. So that's just a classic example of how it works. Now, I'm interested to know just very quickly from the panel, you know, Manchester is really celebrated for its really collaborative nature, for its partnerships. And is it that attitude that really sets us apart and, you know, and makes us the envy perhaps of other regions in the country?
I think, again, I've been with the chair for 17 years, 18, a long time. It's always been a case, I think, of going back and we mentioned the Manchester family, the Greater Manchester group of organisations. bear in mind, this has been going since the mid-80s. This collaborative work started going way back in the day, without going into a history lesson. The Association of Greater Manchester Authorities. All local authorities, when Greater Manchester County Council was established, all local authorities said, actually, there's something better we can do here if we start to work together. And they work together on a voluntary basis. Forget your party politics, Conservative, Lib Dem, Labour, they were all working together. That was the mid-1980s. And that's developed and gone through the years to where we are now. The combined authority, the elected mayor, all the rest of it. But that's about 40 years worth of history there. What other people don't get in other parts of the country is they think they can just transplant what happens in Greater Manchester into another part of the country and it will automatically work. It won't. You've got to work at it. You've got to be resilient with it. You've got to recognise that things sometimes don't work. And I can't remember who mentioned it. There's an important word here that I think goes beyond a lot of this, and that's trust. And it's having trust in each other that this will actually work. So I think this is a result of where we are now, of 20, 30, 40 years worth of hard effort. People like Richard Leeson and others, Peter Smith, who sadly passed away a couple of weeks ago, putting in the effort with key business leaders to say, right, this is how we want this to work in Greater Manchester. That's very difficult to do overnight. And that's the problem. And that's the problem actually with some of the government thinking, that they see it and think, oh, they've got one of those, so you can have one. And then they're surprised when it doesn't.
I quite agree. And yesterday this came up through some of the big national and multinational businesses who were in the room with MPs, and it was this subject actually. And they said the USP, they were talking about the Northwest, and I think it is true actually, wider than Manchester actually as well, it is. Is the collaboration works better here and the private sector stepping up works better here than they experience elsewhere where their operations are. But there's a real danger to what can sometimes be, let's say Northwest exceptionalism, be a bit guilty of it. And actually that's not going to continue by accident. We've got to continue it and build it up with purpose. And we're also shockingly undiverse. And if we don't do it with purpose, then we're going to get what we've always got. And I think, yes, in Peter Smith's memory, quite frankly, in 10 years, we need to say, actually, we took that 40 years and look where we've got with the next decade and look how much better it is even than it was then.
Yeah, that absolutely draws on the point that you made earlier, isn't it, about making sure that we bring this through from a leadership perspective right the way through our younger professionals, etc., and making sure that we cultivate and continue to make sure that that thrives in the right direction, and also that inclusive. Sorry, Richard.
No, I think it's really important to make sure that we continue to put those investable propositions, not just to government, not just think government, but thinking about those global private investors as well. And that's so key. And it is one of the benefits of Greater Manchester and wider Northwest, that there is that collaboration. So there's not that kind of fight that might take place. It's a clear investable proposition, really well thought through. That brings investment in, be it government, be it international investors, be it domestic investors, and keeping that going, that's really key. I think there are some challenges around, great, Manchester's great, you've got the skyscrapers. Do we need to level up to Greater Manchester? Is that what levelling up is? Or is levelling up actually to the southeast? So there's question marks around what that means. And I think there's a danger in there that is there going to be investment kind of going elsewhere? Because GM has been seen as successful. I think it's a danger, but I think as long as you've got an investable proposition and you continue to build those, it's going to be in the right place. But you can't take it for granted. You absolutely can't take it for granted.
Now, conscious that we are absolutely right out of time, and it's kind of my fault because we kind of continued the networking slightly longer than we were going to. So I will wrap it up there. But if you've got any more questions or anything, either bring them to me or I'll come and have a quick chat with the panel before they have to head off. But first and foremost, huge thank you to every single one of you, to Emma, John, Richard, and Chris. It's been an absolute delight. I think this is actually, I'm going to put it out there, my favourite event I've ever chaired. So there you go. I really enjoyed it, just being with friends on the panel. To you for coming down, and a huge thank you obviously to the Hyatt for hosting us here today as well. The wonderful spread they put on downstairs and for this room as well, and for everything else. And I think we've got some future events coming up here. I think if I'm right, Sean, Future Pro Manchester are doing a speed networking event here
Yes, that's right, on the beautiful Hyatt House, which is probably 18th floor of the Speed Network event. 21st of October, so just jump on the website.
Brilliant, brilliant. And some key events coming up for us: FinTech event on the 24th of September and our Health Tech conference on the 30th of September. So pop on the website for more information, or just come and ask me and I'll be able to tell you some more about it. But thank you once again.
I've got to get in and plug to Progress 21.
Oh yes, sorry, yes, nearly forgot.
I won't be sitting here next time. Progress 21, we've got a really big event coming up, focused on career opportunities, focused on global, global opportunities and where Greater Manchester sits in that, and then on the business base. We're expecting 30,000 there on the 23rd of September, Progress 21 on the 23rd of September at Manchester Central. If you haven't signed up for that, please do so. That's going to be a really big event that's going to help put us on the map of getting back together and networking again. So do watch out for that one.
And every single one of us is going to be there in some form or another as well, aren't we?
Sorry to cut across.
No. I promised you that we would talk about it as well. So and I completely ran out of time. But thank you again, and yeah,